Hi everyone, and welcome to a wrap-up for another readathon. This one I participated in Escape the Readathon. I will find the hosts and link them in the comment section below. I will also, there is a Discord, and I will link that in the description box as well. This I participated in. It was fun. You didn't know the prompts until later on. So they were revealed to you once you read a certain amount of books, and then the prompt was revealed. And you did this as a team. I was on Team Film Crew, which if you participated, then you already know Team Film Crew is the one that won. So congratulations to my team. Yay, we did it. Now, I did not read every prompt. So it was like the last one. There was one prompt. And that was for the final door, and I did not get to that one. So just one prompt. So the first prompt was to mood read. For this one, I went with Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I gave this one 3 stars. There is so much more depth to the creature and to the creator, to both the creature and the creator in this book compared to the movies. The movie takes the very basic skimmings off of the top of this and then made it into a movie. There's a lot of changes in there. I wish there was a movie that was so much more true to the book. Obviously, as we know, there's Frankenstein. He makes this creature. Well, in this book, he abandons the creature, and the creature is left to kind of fend for themselves. The creature watches a family, learns how to speak and do certain actions by watching other people, but people end up dead in Frankenstein's life, and the creature tries to get him to create a Mrs. Frankenstein, and you're just following as you learn more about the creature, how he feels, how he's learned things, and the fear that the doctor fears for those that he loves in his family. So there's a lot more depth than the movies. I mean, the movies are fun, they're enjoyable. There's a lot more depth to the characters in the book. So I recommend the books over the movies, but that's generally the case. Ended up giving 3 stars. Not my favorite classic, but I still enjoyed it. Okay, now, after the mood read, we came to door number 1. There were 2 different prompts. Only one prompt opened the door. I do not know which prompt opened the door, but I did read a book for both of the prompts. So, option number 1 is a cover that reminds you of a co-host. For this one, I selected Final Grade by R.L. Stine, which is part of the original Fear Street sagas. This one we're following Lily as she's very ambitious, wants to become valedictorian, and I think she's like on par with being valedictorian with her cousin. Anyway, Lily will have these images and longings to kill and hurt people, and then they end up dead. But Lily's not the murderer, but there is a lot of suspicion on her. So you do find that out quite early that she didn't do it. That's very easy to figure out. And so you're just following, these are novellas. You're just following as she tries to figure it out. Who's killing these people? Why are they doing it? Yeah. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Not my favorite in the Fear Street sagas, but I still enjoyed it. It was still an enjoyable read, still a quick read. Oh, and the thing with the Escape the Readathon, books had to be at least 50 pages or more. If you read a manga or a graphic novel, it had to be 100 pages or more. Okay. The option for second option for door number 1. Oh, let me tell you this. Reminds me of a co-host. The reason I selected this is one of the co-hosts loved the 90s and horror. And this is a horror book that came out in the 90s. So that's why I say that one counted. Okay. The second option for door number 1 was to read a cover that has no white. That one was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but I ended up going with The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. As you can see, the color here, this is actually yellow. It is not white, it is yellow. There is no white on this cover. This one, we're following this gal as she basically ends up fed up with her life, thinks it's not worth living, that she's basically worthless garbage, and tries to commit suicide. And now she's in this kind of limbo afterlife, and she's in this one library where when it's like, what would her life have been like had she taken a different path. And so she's given this book, and she basically delves into this world and starts to live this life. If she has any regrets or doubts about that life, she fades out of that one life path and back into this life midnight library and gets to choose another book. And so she's learning more about herself, and maybe that things weren't so bad. There are benefits and disadvantages to every life path that she could have been on, depending on choices that she made, like who to date, who to marry, what career path to go down, how much different your life could have been. A lot of great stuff in this book. I ended up giving this one 5 stars, written by Matt Haig. Loved it. And I want to pick up more of Matt Haig's work. Okay. Next, after we unlocked door number 1, it was to mood read. So for my mood read, I did Flight 171 by Amy Christine Parker. We're following this group of teenagers, these classmates that are going somewhere to go on a ski trip. I don't remember if it's Colorado or Utah that they're going to, but somewhere where the snow is great to go and ski. Kind of want to say Colorado in this particular case. And ends up there is this demon-like person that's like, one of you has to be a sacrifice for me to possess your body instead of this old body, or everyone on this plane dies. So, and you're just following that as they're trying to survive. It was fine. I gave it 3 stars. I don't see myself rereading this one. One of the characters on this, the main character we're following, she has a twin sister who was killed in a hit-and-run automobile accident, and it turns out that one of her classmates, which you learn from the synopsis, is the person that was behind the wheel that killed her twin sister. This does have an LGBT rep in it, and this demonic creature starts revealing people's darkest secrets. Some of the secrets aren't so bad, some are bad, obviously, like doing a hit and run. So yeah, I'm gonna unhaul it. I don't see myself rereading that one, so, and that fell on the floor, and I'm not gonna pick it up right now. Okay, next, so for door number 2, we had two selections. The first option was to read an author's debut book. This one will also be unhauled, and that is Severance by Ling Ma. I did enjoy this one. It's like a pandemic, except it's more like a fungal or mildew ma type of a thing. So you get it more from being in a contaminated room rather than being around people. You can't catch it from one person to the other. And what happens is you kind of become a zombie. You're not a flesh-eating zombie, but you just doing the same tasks over and over. So if one of the big tasks was you working at a retail store where you sell clothes, maybe this task you're doing over and over is folding the shirts over and over and over, and you're literally decaying. So we're following this person as she reflects back on her life as she and her parents immigrate from, I think it's China, I could be wrong on that, but they immigrate to the United States, end up in Utah. The main character is now in New York, works for a company that sells stuff. Right now she's over like a Bible making department, and things just start to shut down because everyone is dying from this thing, and then she ends up leaving and ends up with this group of people trying to get from one place to another to survive. So it's a survival story, and they go into break into people's houses. I say break because at that point I don't know if it would really be considered breaking and entering, but they are trying to forage for food and other things to help survive. So, and the houses are breaking into, the people are dead, and the house is abandoned anyway. But the reason why I'm unhauling that, there's no quotation marks in the book, and that is one of my biggest pet peeves with books, and so I will not reread it physically. If I reread it, it will be via audiobook. The second option for door number 2 was to read a book without the words the, of, and, or in the title. This one I went with Can You See Me? By Libby Scott and Rebecca Westcott. This has autism rep. It's a middle grade. We're following Tally as she adjusts to being in junior high for the first time. 6th or 7th grade. I want to say it's 6th grade. This takes place in England. She's already had her autism diagnosis, but she is still trying to figure out who she is and how to cope with certain things. One of the things I really liked about this one is she has journal entries and talks about pros and cons of maybe noise sensitivity, of how she has better hearing than other people. What are the pros of that? What are the cons of that? What are the pros of anxiety? What are the cons of anxiety? And she talks about that. She talks about masking, of trying to fit in, and things like that. I think this is could be a very important read to a lot of people, especially to kids for the target demographic, but I highly recommend more people read this one. I think this could be very eye-opening as far as what a lot of people will experience with sensory overload, how certain things people like and don't like, that are on the spectrum in general. So yeah, I ended up giving that one 4 stars. Loved it. Okay. Okay, and then, so door number 2 was unlocked, and now it was to mood read. For this one, I went with book number 2 in the selection series, and that is The Elite by Kiera Cass. This one we're continuing to follow America. She continues to compete with like 5 or 6 other girls for the Prince's Hand, aka the King in Waiting, Maxon, one of the two. So basically she was a 6, and one of these girls that she's competing with will become the next princess, which will then, she would then become the next queen. It's a dystopian. Their lives are in danger. There are these 2 groups, one from the north, one from the south, that as this selection competition continues, the attacks increase. One of them is more to just spread terror and fear. The other one, they're more about harming people. So, yeah. I mean, that's really all I can say with it being the next in a series. I can't say much, otherwise it's going to spoil it, but America is from a class system. So you have like, one would be like the king and the queen, and then you have all the way down to like a 7 or an 8, which are the lowest of the lows as far as the class goes. She's a 6, and so yeah, there is a lot of talk, especially in the first book, of falling in love with someone that might be a class below you, and how detrimental that could be to you or your family or both. So yeah, I enjoyed that one. I really enjoyed that series. 4 stars. Okay, now we're at door number 3. So we have 2 options again. The first option is to read a book that only has, the title is only 2 words, excluding the word the. Well, this one doesn't have the word the in it, but it's Tokyo Ghoul. This is the second in a manga series written by Sui Ishida. This is, think zombies, but they can pass as everyday humans, but they do eat flesh. So, yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say with it being a manga. They're considered short stories. This one, we do find out there's this group of people that want to go and kill all the zombies. So kind of like zombie hunters. But yeah, and one of the main characters in this is half zombie, half human. For whatever reason, he only turned halfway. I will say, this one I ended up giving 4 stars, and I liked this one much more than the first one. I was a little leery of continuing on with the series, but I'm glad I did. I enjoyed this one a lot more. And that's really, some of these are hard where they're further on in the series and where they're so short. Like a manga, you can easily spoil stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on. The second option was to read a book that you didn't buy. I read Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. I'm not going to give this one a star rating. It's a middle grade. I'm not even quite sure how I feel about it. There's this girl that's just trying to be herself, and at first people love her and then they absolutely hate her. And anyone that tries to date her or be her friend, they start to shun and hate that other person. That's pretty much all I can say. It is a very short story. I did not buy this one. This is actually my mom's copy, so I'm going to be giving this one back to her. I am willing to read the next book. I think this is only a duology. This is a series. I think it's only a duology. I am willing to read the next book, but I can't. I think what kind of really brought this down is a lot of talk of how weird this girl is and how strange she is, and that just kind of was very uneasy and unsettling for me. So I didn't really thoroughly enjoy that one. So I'm not going to rate it because I can see how a lot of people would like it and would relate, but just not for me. Okay, so door number 3 is unlocked. The next was to do a mood read. So this one I read Herding Cats by Sarah Andersen. This was book number 3 I think it's 3. Anyways, part of the Sarah Scribbles collection. This is a nonfiction. This is a graphic novel, although there is no plot. It's mostly kind of like, if you read the Sunday comics, like I did growing up, it'll be like, here's several panels about anxiety or one other topic, where this is nonfiction. She's poking fun at life type of a situation, or making light of certain situations. Pre-2016, post-2016, how it's all of a sudden a fire dumpster. Being mad at the cat for flipping over a bowl of food, and then all of a sudden, oh, I can't be mad at you because I love your tummy, and all of that. What it's like to suddenly shave your legs for women, and how smooth they can be. Just poking fun at life situations and values and thoughts and things like that. What did I give this one? 4 or 5? 5 stars. Sarah Andersen has become definitely an auto-buy. I want more of her work. There is one other book in the Sarah Scribbles collection. I would love Sarah Andersen to do more in this particular series or collection. I don't know, but I do know there's at least one more. Okay, so that was the mood read. Next up, we are now at the basement. So, 2 options. Number 1 was a book that starts with the same letter as the last book read of the author's first name. So, first name, Sarah, starts with an S. I read Shiver, starts with an S, written by Junji Ito. 4 or 5, 4 stars. This is a collection of short stories, so I literally cannot tell you anything about this one other than that this is horror short stories, manga. Just a bunch of different short stories. One of them is that people, like there's this one where this person develops holes in their body. Another short story is where all of a sudden there's these balloons that show up. They're balloons of people's faces. And if you go outside, basically the balloon will strangle you. And you're dead. So a bunch of horror short stories, 4 stars. I love Junji Ito's work. So that was very enjoyable to me. Okay, the second option to unlock the first door in the basement was to read a book that is mostly the same color as the last book. This one was hard. Okay, so I have Shiver. The next one I went with Children of the Whales. Yes, I mean, it's very, very different, but you have the blues. You have the peaches in here. You have the browns in here. So same color, just different arrangement. There's black, and then there's black. Red in the lips, red in here. So a lot of the same colors, just it's still a vastly different and different arrangement. But Children of the Whales, Volume 2, written by Umeda. We're following this group of people. You have the marked and the unmarked. The marked tend to live longer, or the unmarked live longer and become the elders of this community that's built out of sand, and they're in the middle of this sea of sand, and they're just trying to survive. Those that are marked tend to die a lot younger, and they have magical abilities. That's all I can say. I'm still trying to figure this out. This is a fantastical world. There was a lot of stuff revealed in this one, and I enjoyed this one a lot more than the first one. So if you did not particularly care for the first one, I suggest maybe checking out the second one from the library or somewhere. I enjoyed it more, and maybe you'll enjoy the second book more than the first one like me. So doesn't mean you have to continue on with the whole series or anything. I just suggest it because I found the second one much more enjoyable than the first one. Okay. Alright, so basement door number 1 is unlocked. Next was to do a mood read, and for this one I went with Tombs by Junji Ito. Same situation. Can't tell you anything because it's a collection of short stories and it's all manga. One thing I will tell you is there's one story in here where people die, you can't move them, and a tombstone appears where this person's dead body was. That's where the title comes from on this particular one. But 4 or 5? 4 stars. Loved it. Still loving Junji Ito's work. Okay. So that was the mood read. Now we are in the basement door number 2, and this is to read a book with one more word in the title than the last book. So Tombs is one word. Book I picked was Black Butler. That's 2 words. Black Butler, written by Yana Toboso. Oh my heck, 5 stars. I was not expecting to love this series as much as I did. I wasn't even halfway and I was like, I've got to get the second book. I need to know what's going to happen next. I haven't picked up the second book, but I will. So this one we are following this guy who's a butler, and he's like a black belt in martial arts type of a thing. He is tasked with protecting this 12-year-old who's like this child tycoon of a toy store. That's kind of all I can tell you right now. He can catch bullets. And he's got a lot of hidden talents. So this was fabulous. I love this one, and I think this is one of my favorite mangas now, and I haven't even read the next one. I've had some good manga reads this month. Okay. The second option for the second basement door was to read a book you first heard about on social media. Orange. This is a complete first collection. There is a number 2. I have ordered that. I have that one ready to go. Fell in love with this one as well. Basically, you're following this main character. She gets a letter from her future self. So her future self was able to write a letter to her 17-year-old self, and there's like a 10-year difference, saying, hey, you need to do everything you can to protect this guy because he is going to die. Suicide is brought up a lot, so please be aware of that. But I found this to be very tender, very sweet. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. This was written by Ichigo Takano. I love this one, and it just shows how much, again, it's another book that I've read this month or in the month of May, where certain choices and decisions that you make can have an impact and can alter the course of your life. For things like that, again, like getting a certain job, inviting someone out on a date, or not following through and talking about how you feel. Things like that. Helping someone out, being their shoulder to cry on. You know, certain things can have big, big impacts. Small decisions can have big impacts on your life. Gave that one 5 stars. There's really not much I can say with that being a manga, but I do highly, highly recommend it. Just go in with caution because suicide is talked about a lot. Okay, next. Basement door is open. The next was a mood read. I did Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. This is the first in the Hannibal Lecter series. I give this one 3 stars. I've said in previous videos, I'm on the fence about hauling it. It depends on the rest of the series. I will read the rest of the Hannibal Lecter series. It just depends on how much I enjoy the other books in that series to indicate if I'm going to keep this one. So this book is on the chopping block. We're following Will Graham as he is investigating a serial killer. In this particular book, Hannibal Lecter is already in a prison. He's trying to, in this particular book, Will Graham is investigating a serial killer known as the Tooth Fairy, and then it transforms into being called the Red Dragon. So that is the name of the serial killer, or what they're calling him, and he goes and kills families. There are a few chapters where you do get from the perspective of the serial killer, and it does get graphic. He does masturbate. He gets graphic as far as like body guts and gore at times, so do be aware of that. It's horror. There's a lot of trigger warnings. There's talk of animal death or torture as well, but that thankfully did not get very graphic as far as that part goes. But ended up 3 stars. I don't know if I'm going to continue. I will continue, but I don't know if I'll hold on to this book. With this being a horror, I don't want to spoil a lot, so I'm trying to be very vague. If you want to read more from a serial killer's perspective, this would not be the story for you. This follows mostly the perspective of the detective. Okay, the next one was To Get Out of the Final Door, which puts you out of the house. 2 options. One option was to read an intimidating book. I did not do that one. So that's the only prompt I did not complete. The next prompt was to read a least read genre. I read romance, but spicy romance tends to be a least read genre for me. So I went with a spicy romance, and that was Analyzing Her Assets by Mia Savan. I was approved to read this from NetGalley. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It takes place in Tel Aviv. The main female character is plus size, so you do have that plus size representation in there. This has another thing in stories and plots that I don't like is when people are very cunning and sneaky and undermined, and it's like they gaslight, I think is the word for it. They basically take something around and say, oh, well, no, I didn't hit on you, you hit on me. And all of this, and this was my idea, not your idea. And they try and reverse it to make them look like the good guy when they're really the bad guy. It does get very spicy. There's 4 or 5 spicy scenes in this. So it does get spicy. It takes place in Tel Aviv. The main character, Gideon, his dad owns a company. And it's a lot of data analysis type of a thing. So a lot of that went over my head. I'm not saying that you need to be aware and knowledgeable about that to enjoy the book, but I think it would have helped me enjoy the book a little bit more because there was a lot of technical talk in it, in my opinion, and so a lot of it went over my head. Obviously, the romance part I got. The funniest part in this, and it was just a very minor thing, was that Gideon's mom writes books and she wants to venture into writing erotica. He used to read and be like the first reader for his mom to kind of help evaluate and saying, hey, these things aren't working out so well, you need to change this, or these are my questions to help you develop the character and the plot more. But with it being erotica, he's a little weirded out where it's his mom that's the author. So he ends up getting the female main character in this book to read the book instead. And so she becomes the primary kind of first reader for his mom. Again, a lot of talk of data analysis and stuff like that. There's one of the things in here is there's something in a company that's going on that's a little fishy, and that's where the underminedness and trying to flip it on and reverse it and be like, oh, I'm not the bad guy, you're the bad guy type of a thing. That really bugs me. So that kind of took that down a little bit for me as well. So that's part of why it was only a 3-star for me. But the romance between Gideon and the main female character, and I have forgotten her name, I thought that was very sweet. I did think the romance between them was sweet. Obviously you had the big, and this is one of the things that bugged me, and this one was my own personal preference. The big third act conflict happened, and then it resolved rather quickly, which was fine. But the whole resolution part, there was basically a sting operation that takes place, but then you don't get to see like the people coming in with the guns blazing type of a thing to say you're busted in your lies, and then the reaction of the person that was committing the bad stuff. You don't get to see that whole reaction, which is what I would have wanted to have seen. It just goes from they're staking this situation out and these two people are talking to, all of a sudden now we're at the very end of the story and this one person's at a new position and things like that. So I felt like it was missing just a little bit there. At times I do feel like it dragged a little bit as well. There were certain parts that I did feel like it was a little long, could have been cut back, but I do wish that one part was in it. I do feel like that was missing. Anyway, 3 stars for that. So if you like steamy, you may like that one. I did like that it took place in Tel Aviv. My one issue with that is I felt like the description of the country was lacking. For example, if it wasn't mentioned in the book that it takes place in Tel Aviv, I would not have known that that's where it took place. But there are books like that where you don't know unless they say it, and it just kind of, it's like nothing stood out about the description for me. But the description of the place was not the primary focus of it. It was the romance between the two. So that's it. Those were the books that I read for the Escape the Readathon. Let me know if you participated in Escape the Readathon. I'll try and find all the co-hosts and the hosts and put them in the description box. Did you participate? Did you read any of the books? Have you read any of these books? Any other books by any of these authors? What team were you on? Talk to me in the comment section below. And until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book. And I'll talk to you later.